Turning to our Forecasting Our Future coverage, a new study shows that extreme heat could be the result of an emerging heat belt across parts of the country and right here in Arkansas as well. 4029 meteorologist Robert Suhr digs into the eye-opening numbers, joining us live. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, Brandon. The 121-page National Assessment on Hazardous Heat released by the First Street Foundation shows that, well, the extreme heat that we've been dealing with this summer could soon become the norm. It's no surprise that this summer has been one for the record books. In fact, Fort Smith has already seen the mercury rise above 100 degrees 31 times this summer, while XNA has eclipsed 100 degrees a dozen times. And that's not taking into account the heat index or what it feels like outside. But new data released recently by the First Street Foundation, which studies climate change in the United States, shows a new heat belt that is projected to develop everywhere you see the red over the next 30 years. That includes Arkansas. In those areas, summertime heat indices could surpass 125 degrees on at least one occasion. To First Street researcher Jeremy Porter, that was eye-opening, and you can thank climate change.
It was kind of alarming in the sense that there was such a huge amount of the population, up to about 108 million people in 30 years, that could be exposed to this extreme heat belt. And if you go back and you look at the National Weather Service rubric at 125-degree heat index for their extreme heat threshold, heat stroke becomes imminent at that level.
And if you think a 125-degree heat index is not possible in this area, we've already flirted with those numbers, especially back on June 12th. Which is why when I show you the heat index, what it feels like, that's why it feels like 117 in Springdale, and it feels like 122 in Vian, Van Buren, Alma, and Ozark. It is just absolutely too dangerous to be outside right now. Porter adds this isn't cherry-picked data. Most long-range climate models all pointed to the same result.
In the short term, they're pretty well aligned. It is going to get hotter over the next 20, 25, 30 years. We can just go back in the historic record and see that we have seen increases in these extreme events over the last 30 years. Over the next 30 years, they're going to continue to increase.
What's also expected to increase are the number of consecutive days above 100 degrees. Next year, Sebastian County could have over a dozen straight days, and by 2053, that number jumps to over 20. And it's worse across other parts of the state. Porter says for Arkansas, location is everything.
Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, again, Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee, all sit right in the middle of that extreme heat belt that is highly vulnerable to this type of extreme heat.
He adds all that heat holds more moisture, which could lead to more heavy rain and flash flooding events like what we saw earlier this year, as well as the devastating flooding in Kentucky. Now, Brandon, Porter also stressed to me the amount of work that went into this study, which also included taking the data to the National Weather Service as well as NOAA for them to review all the information and waiting for their approval before releasing the study and the information out to the public. Now, if you want to read it, we've got a link to it up on our website, 4029tv.com. We're live tonight in Rogers. Robert Suhr, 4029 News.
Some interesting information there, Robert.